Everybody, coming up right now, there you saw on your screen, we are celebrating the iconic, legendary TV series Alice, and also the feature film as well. Do you remember the feature film? The feature film came before. It was in like 1974. And the full name, of course, wasn't just Alice. It was Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, a Martin Scorsese epic film. A little bit of a different vibe than the TV series Alice, but there is the actual film. Ellen Burstyn, of course, the legendary Ellen Burstyn, and Chris Christopherson starred in that. So we're going to talk about that as well, because our very special guest, Barry M. Putt Jr., is the author of a really, really popular, well-received book. He's a brilliant writer and screenwriter, and he's published, other material as well. We're going to talk about that. Matter of fact, before we talk about that even further, I want to remind you too, in case you didn't know, for those of you who love the series Alice, those of you who also loved Linda Lavin, who we lost recently, the brilliant singer and entertainer and television star and so much more, we did an epic special here at the Jim Masters Show, brought in some special celebrity guests and friends, people who knew Linda Lavin, worked with her. And if you didn't see that episode, just want to throw it out there. You can go back in our archives on our YouTube channel, Jim Masters TV, and take a look at the Linda Lavin Celebrity Tribute Special that we did here at the Jim Masters Show. If you missed it or you want to see it again, it was very emotional, very moving, very heartwarming, and there was a lot of behind-the-scenes stories that the guests shared about Linda Lavin, not just as Alice, but all the other things that she did in her career as a singer and other TV shows she was on, movies. She was everywhere, stage and Broadway, everything you can think of. So we did a special tribute, which we like to do here occasionally on the Jim Masters Show, and we remembered Linda Lavin. So check that out. And on this episode, we're celebrating the series. Now, this is a really cool book. If you love everything to do with Alice, and you love Mel, and you love the whole Flo and the whole group, those of you who love the TV series, well, we got you covered here with the book. But again, the film, as I mentioned, is referenced. The feature film is referenced as well. This came first, and then Alice followed and became our epic TV series on CBS for a long time, and beloved as well. And just want to tell you a little bit about our very special guest who's joining us here on the show. As I mentioned, Barry is a prolific writer, and he is somebody who loves what he does. He loves television. He loves pop culture. He loves movies. And he's got an incredible background, too. Tell you a little bit about him. Not only is he the author of the book, Alice, Life Behind the Counter and Mel's Greasy Spoon, which is a guide to the feature film, the TV series, and more, behind-the-scenes look at the making of the feature film and the TV series. His other books include the Audio Dramatist Resource Guide. Yep. Also, stories told through sound, the craft of writing audio dramas for podcasts, streaming, and radio. Forthcoming, The Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew on film, TV, and stage. And he has scripted more than 50 audio drama productions for series such as Richard Wade, U.S. Marshal, his full-length drama. Amid's Tapestries will be produced by Midtown International Theater Festival. And that is just the short list, folks. There's our guest on the screen. Let me show you the book, because you're going to definitely want to get the book and add it to your collection. If you're a TV buff like me, if you couldn't tell from our set with the I Dream of Jeannie bottle, the George Burns, we've got Gilligan over here from Dream of Denver, Bob Denver's wife, who was a guest on our show. And I work in television and radio. That's why I love when we get to talk about, some of your favorite TV stars and film stars. Here's the book, and then we'll have Barry join us in just a second. There it is, gang. Really something quite special. It's an insider look. It's behind the scenes. Alice, Life Behind the Counter, and Mel's Greasy Spoon, as I said, is a guide to the feature film, the TV series, and more. And it takes you behind the scenes of one of television's most beloved sitcoms. And it all started with Martin Scorsese's Academy Award-winning film, Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. You'll learn how the movie and the series were developed. You'll also peruse the fact-filled episode log and test your Alice trivia knowledge with a fan quiz featuring over 120 questions. So if you think you're a super Alice fan, well, get ready. The book also includes insights from David Silverman, who was a writer for Alice, Christopher Tayback, the son of Vic Tayback, who of course played Mel in Alice, Lucy Lee Flippin, Fran in Flo, and other cast and crew bios too. A collection of favorite character sayings such as "Kiss my grits" and "Stow it," and "When the donkeys fly," memorable foods from Mel's Diner, like Carrie's wonderful lemon pudding and the secret recipe for Mel's famous chili, a guide to the spin-off series, Flo. You'll laugh. You'll enjoy the hilarious situations, not only with the book, but right now as we welcome our special guest here on the show. Again, it's one of those beloved series. We watched Alice. And of course, there's Diane Ladd, too, who was also a part of the series. But we loved the series. We watched it on CBS. It was appointment viewing. You know, all these shows at that time were, you know, they were appointment viewing. You watched all these shows. You watched All in the Family and Alice and all the rest of these terrific shows. And it's so great to see them in reruns, you know, on the nostalgic channels and elsewhere. And of course, all the different opens to the series, which Linda Lavin herself sang. Talk about that. And of course, there is the actual Mel's Diner. Really cool stuff. So lots of good things to talk about, again, as we celebrate the iconic series that you know and love so well, Alice, starring Linda Lavin and company, and then also the feature film with our very special guest joining us from the tri-state area in New Jersey, USA. Let's welcome Barry M. Putt Jr. to the show. Barry, welcome to the Jim Masters Show. It's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Hi, Jim. It's great to be here. I'm really looking forward to talking to you about Alice.
You know, it's perfect that you are in New Jersey, considering we're talking about a diner.
Right.
How is that, right? And I come from New York and originally out east on Long Island, the original home base, and diners everywhere. So, but the diner was a very special place where most of the action happened, if not there, or of course, Alice's apartment as well, and all the other crazy places. What was it about the series and also the feature film and all these cool tidbits that you assembled and you put together in this fantastic book? What was it about this particular series that piqued your interest, where you wanted to write this amazing book, which is just like a terrific treasure trove of memories and facts and fun, you know, cool things that you share? What was it about the series that interested you to want to write about it? And welcome.
Thank you. I think it was the characters and the situation. I mean, most people have been to restaurants, right? So it's something that we can relate to, and it's an insider's look at how a restaurant is run. One thing that you mentioned about diners, the importance of it, is that actually in the TV series, Alice was from New Jersey. Wasn't from New Jersey. She wasn't from New Jersey in the feature film, but she was from New Jersey in this TV series. So those were some of the things that really brought me, you know, to be interested in watching the series. I watched it actually when it was in syndication, but those are definitely some things that were really memorable for me.
So when you watched it, were you singing the theme song too? Linda Lavin, as I said, you know, if you watch it over the years, there's a couple of different versions of the Alice theme. And when we had some terrific people on and we were celebrating Linda Lavin when she had passed away with our tribute special, they were talking about the different versions of the theme. And the one that I liked, although I think she said her favorite was the other one, I liked the one where she goes, "So sweet," and she goes up.
Yes.
An incredible voice and an incredible performer. And the fact they cast her as Alice was ideal. Did you watch every episode so far of that series to really you get the research. What was the research like? How did you dig in and get all this information and these interviews? And that must have been a daunting task, Barry.
Well, let's see here. So they actually recorded the Alice song every single season. They redid this song. Linda Lavin sang it. So there was 9 seasons. So she did it approximately 9 different times. And they were jazzy, right? Sometimes they would just have scat jazz singing in them. Those tend to be my favorites, but I like actually all of them. And they also changed the lyrics from season 1 to some of the other seasons. And it was written by the Bergmans, who are a very well-known husband and wife songwriting team.
Oh, Marilyn, Alan and Marilyn Bergman, yeah.
Yeah, they wrote a lot for Barbra Streisand and a lot of other people as well. But in terms of your question, the research was done there were 3 different types of research that I did. So I did the what I call book and print research, which is anything that is published or not published. I had a great resource where I could find that information. I did cast and crew interviews, and then I did personal observations. So I watched all 202 episodes of Alice at least 3 different times. And then
did you lock yourself in a room? Did you do a binge weekend? How did you do it? Little by little?
It was over time.
It was over time.
Yeah. I had my
if his eyes look a little glassy, we now know why.
It was my publisher gave me a year to write the book. So
the great folks at Bear Manor Media. Yeah. Right. Yep.
So it was the personal observations and research that went into the fan quizzes and the episode logs. Those were, that's where that information came from, essentially. And I tried in the book to make the trivia questions kind of an extension of the information that you're getting in the narrative. So, and what I mean by that is so that there's not really duplication. Like the trivia questions are not duplicating what you get in the narrative. They're kind of an extension, and they're giving you more information beyond that.
So what was it, I mentioned in the introduction a little bit about all the cool things that the book offers, which is unique. It's very interactive. It isn't just reading facts. Okay, this happened, and this was that episode, and this was happening here, and all of the usual things. That you feel like you're almost a part of the series in a way when you're going down memory lane. And also it's triggering things that you forgot about when you're reading it. So you feel it's a very participatory kind of book, which I think is fantastic. You almost feel like you should have crayons and you're going to be doing coloring on one of the pages. It's so interactive. That, I think, was by design, how you wanted to bring us in and actually feel the whole Alice experience. What were some other things that you hoped people would get out of the book? And what was your approach to this celebration of the series, as well as the film, touching upon the film, versus anything else that might have been out there in reference to Alice?
Okay, so this is actually the only book written on Alice. There are articles written on Alice, but this is the only book that's dedicated to the series. So my thought was to be as comprehensive as I could be in getting all the information, to make sure that it was based upon verified fact and not rumor or gossip. And I wanted to do that by bringing in the kind of different perspectives. So that's why there's the narrative, section. Then there's a detailed bios on each of the actors that are involved in some of the crew. And for many of those, for Linda Lavin and Polly Holiday, and most of the stars, it is really it's the longest version of their biography that's in print right now. And I included, as you had mentioned, the trivia questions. I even included a section about David Plunkett, who was a really well-known, he wasn't well-known, I'm sorry. He was a very dedicated fan to the series. And he had a scrapbook he brought to when he was a teenager that he brought to the show, and then he got to meet the cast. And I think every year his family would go to LA and vacation there so that he would be able to go and see the show and meet the cast. So he had a huge collection of research and photos. And I just thought that, and he was a real champion of Linda Lavin and this series. So I thought that that was important, to put that in there as well.
And you got a chance yourself to meet the wonderful Linda Lavin as well. And she's holding your book. And there you are at the famous Birdland in New York City. How cool is that? Wonderful, huh?
Yes, I got to meet her a couple of times, both in New York, one at, oh my goodness, definitely at Birdland. That was the second time I met her after the book came out. And then over at Cafe Carlisle, she did.
Another great place. Yeah.
Yeah, I think she did a 3-week concert series.
Yes, she did. Yeah. And when there she's holding the book too. And again, we lost her way too early, but the body of work that she left was extraordinary. And she really embraced that character of Alice in such a beautiful way, didn't she? People wanted to know everything about the series. They loved the uniform. They loved the theme song. They loved the fact that she was representing, women and entrepreneurs, and you can do it, and all of that, which was very important, especially during that time period. It always is important, but as far as it being acknowledged and being in the discussion, she's one of the pioneers in that area, which I think is fantastic. So as much as it was, Alice, the character and the humor and all the rest, there was a wonderful role that she played, which was empowering and inspiring as that character of Alice working at Mel's Diner, that sort of translated through the screen and people really, grabbed a hold of, right?
Definitely. In fact, it even surprised her that she was recognized, or her character of Alice was recognized for equal rights for women in the workforce, and she was invited a couple of times to different gatherings in support of that. So that was something that came pretty early in the series, within the first couple of seasons, that they asked her to do that. So, and I think that meant a lot to her. They actually included episodes after that in the series that dealt with fair wages. They had a male waiter come, and there was an episode about fair wages. Then they were going to replace the waitresses with robots with a robot at one time. So they did in a very entertaining way. They did bring in these types of issues that are that were important in a societal way as well.
And Alice was a part of the CBS television lineup for a number of years, too. Of course, it went into syndication. It's in reruns. The magic, for anybody watching who isn't familiar with this, a little TV talk, usually you try to get a series to hit at least 5 years. And when you hit 5 years, and there are times when it's 4 years and they'll still re-air it. But generally, when you hit 5 years, you have enough episodes to get into syndication, to get into reruns. So the series, whatever series it is, has a longer lifespan than just when it initially aired, because you've got enough. Although it's quite amazing. As I say that, I'm thinking, that's the industry standard generally is 5 years and everybody has a party. We're now going to syndication. It's going to run forever. We're going to get residual checks, and generations of people are going to see the series and see the work. And then there's the honeymooners, which only had a certain amount of episodes, and they found lost episodes, and still run all the time, and people love them, even if you've seen them 500 times, the same episode. It's amazing how some of these shows have that lasting power. Of course, Alice has lots of episodes because it ran so long, but a case like The Honeymooners, or even Mothers-in-Law and some other ones where they didn't necessarily hit the full 5, they're still out there. What do you think that is?
That's an interesting observation. I would say that something that was, I think, really important to the show's success, just to go through. So the first season, but now let me back up here. So Robert Getchell, he wrote the feature film, and we can talk about that, in a few moments. But then CBS brought him in to write the pilot for the TV series Alice. And really during the first year of the show, it was trying to find its grounding with the audience. They brought in a number of directors and producers throughout that first season. And it was never always renewed. They had the pilot, and then they said, all right, well, let's give it 4 episodes. So then they had 4 episodes, and then they said, well, let's give it a couple more episodes. So they kept renewing it just a couple of episodes at a time. It wasn't like they had a full 22, or 20 plus episode season that they knew they were going to be guaranteed to have. And ultimately in season 2, the executives decided to bring in Madeline Davis and Bob Cowher Jr. So who they are the writers that wrote with Lucille Ball from the beginning, from when she did the radio series My Favorite Husband. They wrote for I Love Lucy. They wrote for the Lucy Show, Here's Lucy, some of her specials, and then her final series, Life with Lucy. So they, and I think they also worked on The Mother-in-Laws too. I think that was their series. But so they were brought in as the producers for the show in season 2, and they really gave more dimension to the characters. You'll see, like Vera, she really kind of blossomed as a character. She started to date. Ultimately, right, she got married later on in the show. So they were responsible for giving more dimension to all of the characters. And under their time doing the show, they were in the top 15 most watched shows for most of the time that they did the series, which was from season 2 to season 9. So they were, they were a real important part of the success of the show. But there were other people from I Love Lucy that were connected with the show, like Mark Daniels. Mark Daniels did a lot of directing for the I Love Lucy episodes. And they brought him in to do about half of he directed about half of the Alice TV series episodes. They brought him in specifically when there was an episode that was a little bit more challenging to work on, because he was really good with details. And then some guest stars on Alice were from Lucy. I guess most notably would be Desi Arnaz. He played kind of a flamboyant photographer who was temporarily estranged from his wife and came to the diner, and then reconnected with her at the end. So that's kind of what I call the Lucy connection. And although I think that Alice in itself, great picture. Alice, the series in itself, was successful because of itself, right? I think that having these really seasoned professionals work on the show was an important asset to the success of the show.
And like you said, it isn't always as easy as one thinks. They think when a series is on, because the series looks good, sounds good, and you may like it, behind the scenes, some of the things that go on, you have to really please, the network, and you got to get those ratings, and the sponsors have to be a part of it. There's some of our favorite shows of all time that were canceled in the first year and then brought back. We had Ted Lange, Jill Whelan, and Fred Grandy from The Love Boat on, and they were talking about how initially with The Love Boat, this beloved series with all of these guest stars who were everybody of the time, coming on The Love Boat on ABC, followed by Fantasy Island on Saturday nights, the plane. And but what was fascinating about it is the viewers loved the series, but the critics didn't. And then eventually, I think they started to turn around. But in the beginning, Fred was saying the critics hated it. Even the network in the beginning didn't like it, didn't want it. But because it was an Aaron Spelling production, and Aaron Spelling at that time was Mr. TV producer, basically, like Norman Lear was during that time period. Norman, CBS, and Aaron with ABC. They went with it, and then of course it took off and blossomed. Sometimes it takes time for a show to find its footing, for viewers to find it. One of the worst things is when they change the time period, when people are used to something on a Saturday night or a Tuesday night, and then they keep shifting a show. They did that to a great series, and we've had some of the cast on. Do you remember Family with Seda Thompson and Christy McNichol and Meredith Baxter Burney and James Broderick, Quinn Cummings, Gary Frank, who was on our show? It was on at a set time, and then they kept moving it different later times and earlier times. And eventually, after the 4 or 5 years, people couldn't find the show almost because it was an Aaron Spelling production. They kept moving it on the network schedule, and that's not always so great. Alice pretty much had that solid time, so you knew there it is. And then the other thing too, which I'm sure you agree with, we've talked about this a lot on the show, so I bring it up for the viewers, theme songs. When you have a really good, catchy theme song, like today, you don't always hear a lot of theme songs to TV shows. Usually they go right to the corpse. Everything has changed, or it's just like a bong or ding or and then they're in the scene already. The scene's already going, and you're like, so there's no buildup, there's no theme, there's no singing or instrumentation to where you're like, oh, I know it's 9 o'clock and I know what's coming on, and there's this theme, and we love the theme. And that used to be important with Alice. People would sing the Alice theme that Linda Lavin was singing in the series, all the different versions. And you'd hear it play again with the credits rolling at the end, and you'd look forward to it. But it's changed a lot. Having a good theme, having good music underneath, some of those production elements are essential, aren't they, Barry?
Oh yeah, it's something that you look forward to and that you remember, and that's right. That's a clear identity, for the TV series. So, and usually they encapsulate the basic theme of the show, and especially with Alice, right? It was kind of the backstory. What brought her to this moment? Why is she at the diner? Because of these things that happened that you learn in the theme song. So it really is an important element, for the TV series. And I do agree. And now you have like maybe a 5 or 10 seconds, if it's really long, instrumental that just comes up with the title of the series, and then you're on to the you're right back into the story. So it definitely has morphed since that time into something different than the theme songs.
Absolutely right. We want to welcome everybody who's watching the Jim Masters Show for the first time. This is Jim Masters. Great to have you here. And Barry M. Putt Jr., author, screenwriter extraordinaire. And he's got that new book that we're celebrating as we celebrate the series Alice. And we're also going to talk about, there's his book. You got to pick up a copy. We'll tell you in a minute how you can get it. We're also going to be talking about the feature film, which came before, which is a little bit different, R-rated, not necessarily what you know from the sitcom. We'll talk about that in just a second as well. But, at one time, the series Alice, with more than 200 episodes over 9 seasons, was the longest running American television sitcom to feature a woman in the starring role until it was surpassed in 96 by Roseanne. And the premise, if you've never seen the series, folks, you should watch it. There's enough episodes you can binge. After her husband Donald is killed in a trucking accident, Alice Spivak Hyatt, played by Linda Lavin, and her young son Tommy, who was played by Alfred Lutter first in the television pilot, reprised the role from the film, but portrayed, of course, Tommy was Philip McKeon, Nancy McKeon's brother. And they head, just like you said, from New Jersey home to Los Angeles so Alice can pursue a singing career. As you've seen in the open, the car breaks down. That car that they're driving breaks down, the station wagon with all of the luggage in it. And, as the song is singing and they're trying to figure out what to do with the car that broke down, and viewers meet her soon after she has taken a job as a waitress at Mel's Diner. The later season's exterior shots were of a real diner named Mel's, still in operation in Phoenix, Arizona. And you've had a chance to see it, to go and see the actual diner?
I have actually a friend of mine took that picture that you're showing right now that's in the book. I have called them and spoke to them, but I have not actually had an opportunity to go there. But just like a little bit of background. So in season 1, the producers wanted to have a diner for the opening credits. So they went to Phoenix, Arizona, and they drove around and they found this diner, which was at that point called Chris's Diner. And it had been around, I think, for at least 20 years at that point. So they went in and they talked to the owner, Chris, and said, could we change Chris to Mel's on the sign outside your diner, because we'd like to use it for the, this TV series. So she agreed. And that's actually how it became Mel's Diner. And it's been in operation. It's had a number of different people that have owned it and run it. But if you go there now, they have all sorts of memorabilia from the TV series. They have a special case with the signed script and some other memorabilia. And then throughout the whole diner, they have framed signed photos of different members of the cast. Even in the menu, they have photos of the cast spread throughout the menu. They don't have any foods that were made at the Mel's Diner on the TV show, such as Mel's famous chili. That would be kind of a cool thing if they had that. But they definitely, embrace and welcome their connection with the TV series.
It's amazing. I was on a TV shoot, just last year or so, and we were right there in Phoenix.
Oh.
And I forgot that the diner is there. I would have loved to have stopped by. So the next time I'm in the Phoenix area, we're going to stop by and we're going to dig in. We're going to talk about, the book, and I'll say hi to everybody. And that would be nothing like a good diner, So it's kind of like Phoenix's version of the Cheers bar in Boston is Mel's Diner,
Right.
This classic place. And of course, the restaurant diner in New York that was used for Seinfeld as well. There is one that's there that it's really amazing. Some of these things that, you sort of dig up as you're going along, but it is an iconic place in the annals of television history, Mel's Diner, for sure. Some of the other things too, we were talking about the movie. And, sometimes when we're watching the TV series and we're laughing along with the gang at Alice, we forget that prior there was this movie, and it was sort of patterned after it. Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, an Academy Award-winning Martin Scorsese film starring, again, Ellen Burstyn and Chris Christopherson. And we just lost Chris, I think it was last year. Tell us about the movie for anybody who hasn't seen it, and why you wanted to also touch upon the feature film as much as you did so beautifully, the series Alice.
Sure. Well, my original thought for the book was to include the feature film and the Alice TV series. And then later I decided, you have to include Flo, which we can talk about in a little while. But I had always originally intended to include the film, which, as you mentioned, it's kind of it's a grittier comedy drama type of film. And we see what, the story that's summed up in the theme song, we really kind of see it play out about this young mother who loses her husband and has to make a go of it on her own. So she decides to go, travel, but she gets stopped a number of places along the way and finally settles in Arizona. What prompted me to write about it was that there were some interesting things, especially the original writer, Robert Getchell. He was a college English professor living in California at the time, and he had realized that he wasn't really satisfied with the TV shows that were on, so he decided to write a screenplay of his own that he thought would, that everyone would enjoy. And it was his first screenplay, and it wound up being produced just a couple of years after he wrote it. And that was Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. Ellen Burstyn found the screenplay because she had just done The Exorcist, and she was looking for a follow-up movie. And while she was reading different screenplays, she really liked the Alice character, where there weren't a lot of characters that the story was all about them and their journey towards independence, essentially, and being their own person. So that's really what drew her to the story. She wanted to find a director, so she asked around, and her friend Francis Ford Coppola recommended Martin Scorsese. So she gave him the script. He was also known at that time for focusing on films that had a male point of view. So he read the script, and he said that he was really wanted to do something, from another point of view, from a female point of view, and that really is what sold her on selecting him to direct the film. And something interesting about all of that is that once the film was in, I guess, pre-production, Martin Scorsese brought the cast to Arizona, and they spent 2 weeks doing improv, and then they would transcribe it with the actual scenes. So he wanted to make it closer related to the actual actors and what they could relate to, and bring more of them into the script. And he worked with Robert Getchell. It was, it was the actors, the director, and Robert Getchell, who would then revise the script. So they had 2 weeks to really kind of get familiar with their characters and get familiar with each other before the filming started. So that's just a little bit of background on how the film came to be.
Did you see the film before the TV series, or were you familiar with the TV series and then went and researched and watched the film after, and then you saw the marked differences between the television series Alice and then Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore? What came first for you, the chicken or the egg?
Well, I guess it was definitely the TV series. Mm-hmm. But then when I heard that it was based upon a film, that really intrigued me. And then I went to see the film. This was long before I was going to write the book. I was just interested in it. And the diner plays an important part in the film, but it isn't the whole that it is right in the series. Mm-hmm. Everything in the series is based around the diner, but it isn't necessarily that way in the movie. But you have Flo, you have Vera, you have Mel, and you have Alice, and their characters are a little bit more spicy than they are in different ways in the TV series, but they're definitely very, very memorable there. So, and it was called Mel and Ruby's Cafe in the film. And if you look really closely in the pilot episode, there's a scene outside the diner when they're walking in, and there's a sign that says Mel and Ruby's Cafe. So it actually wasn't called Mel's Diner in the pilot episode. They didn't do that until actually episode 2. That's when it really became Mel's Diner.
A little tidbit there for everybody about the origin of the diner and how it was used for the TV series. And that's cool. That's really amazing stuff. And you mentioned also the spinoff to Alice, which was Flo. And of course, Polly Holliday, who we just lost recently too. So many gone now. Philip McKeon, he went at such a young age, and Vic Tayback, who was Mel, who was perfectly cast as Mel. He was so good as Mel. there was something about Vic Tayback and Telly Savalas that always reminded me of just the way their characters were. There was a similarity to both gentlemen, but Vic Tayback was so perfect as Mel, sort of gruff but funny, gruff, but underneath he had a heart of gold if, he really was pushed. And all of them were, and they're gone now, which is really very sad, but they live on in the memories. But Flo came after, and tell us about Flo and how all that worked. How did it flow?
Okay. So actually, Flo was developed during the first season of Alice, kind of almost simultaneously with Alice, and since they were kind of having trouble finding it, like their grounding with Alice during that first season, they decided that they wanted to make sure that Alice was thoroughly successful before they would launch the series Flo. So that's how it began. And then it spun off, into its own series about the fourth season of Alice. And it was a mid-season replacement. So the first season of Flo was 6 episodes. And then right. It was the top-rated new show for the first season. During season 2, I believe they had about 22 or a little bit more than that episodes. And that was the final season. But they had some wonderful episodes there. The concept was a little different than Alice, right? It's about Flo going back to Cowtown, Texas, where she's from, and opening up a tavern. Essentially, she opens up a tavern there. Mm-hmm. And she kind of reunites with her mother and her sister. And there's a wonderful 2-part episode at Thanksgiving that I believe it was either nominated or it definitely says in my book. I just don't remember offhand.
Better reread your book, right?
That about family and coming together despite their differences is really what that episode is about.
So a lesson, what's really amazing, like you're saying, just made me think. So many of the TV shows, and even of the TV shows before Flo and Alice, they had these messages. No matter what the message was, they ended with a message. Some of the more innocent shows, Brady Bunch, other shows like that, there was always a message that was usually positive, do the right thing, or care, or share, or whatever it may be. But there was always some sort of a lesson, or you were left with some sort of a feeling. It wasn't just you were watching these shows just to pass the time, idle time. You felt invested in it, and you were listening to the message as much as you were being entertained by the brilliant acting that was going on. A lot of messages in those shows, and I love watching them again because of that. And I'll introduce them to folks who haven't seen the particular show that we're watching, and I'll say, did you see that there was an actual message in that 30 minutes or that hour? They had something they were actually saying to you and sharing with you about life and how to get through it all. Yet it was done in a comedic form or dramatic form, which I think was really, really cool. I don't know if we necessarily see as much of that in everything. I mean, it was almost as like every show in a way back then had some sort of moral or value, a message, right?
Yeah, shows today tend to be a little bit more continuing the storyline, right? They'll have an A story, which is the main story for the week. Then they'll have a B story, which is the characters' own lives. And so that's kind of continuing that story, that B story. So I don't know necessarily that we have, I'm sure that there are exceptions, but that we have, episodes that this is really about this aspect of life, what this universal truth or something like that in life.
Remember how big a deal it was when there would be an episode and it turned out to be a 2-parter, and it's a cliffhanger, is she pregnant? Is he okay? He fell down the stairs, whatever it is, whatever the show was. And, stay tuned. Next week, we find out if Archie this or so-and-so this or Alice this, or it was monumental. And you were like, oh no, I got to wait till next Saturday to find out, do they live or not? And the people at school, kids in school would talk about it. People at work around the water cooler would talk about what they just saw. And wow, I wonder what's going to happen next week. And then they would come back next week and say, previously on such and such show, and they would re-air a little bit of it and then bring you into where you were. It was really appointment television, but there was something cool about that. The way they built it up, stay tuned next week, find out if.
Oh, definitely. And I remember sometimes they wouldn't even in the first part, they wouldn't tell you that it was part one. It would just have like you would just know that they put up the titles. Sometimes if they had titles for episodes, they put that title up, and you wouldn't know that it was going to be continued until the end. And that was really more surprising, I think.
Exactly right. You'd be watching and there was no thought that this was going to be a two-parter. They don't mention it. So they've got you're in there, you're invested, you're watching. And then all of a sudden it's that cliffhanger of, oh no, they're not going to finish it until next week. And
right.
Which is amazing. You really, like I said, with your book, you touch upon Martin Scorsese's film, Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. And we learned how the movie and the series were developed, which is fantastic. You've got that fact-filled episode log. You test people's Alice knowledge, the trivia, which I think is fantastic. 120 questions. And then you got a chance to talk to Christopher Tayback, the son of Vic Tayback, who played Mel, as I mentioned, Lucy Lee Flippin, Fran and Flo, and other cast as well, including David Silverman, writer for Alice. Tell us about being able to talk to like the son of Vic Tayback and others who had affiliation with the series.
Sure. Well, that was a really exciting part to learn, to get like firsthand information from a lot of the people that were on the show. And I actually reached out to everybody that I was able to. Some people didn't respond. So, and even after multiple times of me reaching out, they didn't respond. So I wasn't able to connect with those people. But of everyone that I did talk to, they spoke very positively about working on the show. And I remember specifically talking to the writers, and they said that they had. So one thing I didn't mention is that for the first couple of seasons, they had Groucho Marx's son and his writing partner wrote for Alice for a number of seasons. And then when they were moving on, then they brought in these other writers that I talked to. And they said that they were the first ones to bring computers in to the writing process of that show. Before then, they weren't using computers. So just like a little technology thing. But they also said that they always focused, right? One component that they tried to weave into the series as much as possible was music, right? And because Linda Lavin, was really interested in that. And it also went along with her character. So it was a good blend. And that's why they had musical episodes throughout many of the seasons. In different ways. In fact, the pilot episode is about that. It's about Alice trying to get an agent so that she can get singing gigs. But unfortunately, the person that she thinks is an agent really isn't. But there's a lot of other ones where they do original short musicals on the show. And I think that was a really great asset. And that also comes into the character of Belle. So when Polly Holiday, who played Flo, moved on to her own show, they brought in Diane Ladd to play Belle. Now, something interesting about Diane Ladd is that Diane Ladd played Flo in the feature film. And the CBS wanted to bring in as many of the original cast from Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore into the TV series, but some of them were not interested. They were working on feature films, and there was kind of, you either did feature films or you did TV series. There wasn't such a crossover. So but Vic Tayback was an instant yes. Alice's son, he wanted to, although he was only in there for the pilot episode. And then Diane Ladd, she wanted to do it, but she had a contract with another network and they wouldn't let her out of it. So she couldn't play Flo in those first seasons. Otherwise she would have. But her contract had ended by the time that Polly Holiday moved on to the TV series Flo. And that enabled her to come in as a different character, right? Because we already knew Flo and they wanted to have a different character who was Belle. And she was really interested in music as well, which I thought brought a nice compliment to Linda Lavin's interest in music. And then just to kind of, one last thing about all of this is that after Belle was on for about a year, I think she was on from the tail end of one season to almost the end of another season. There was a slight transition at that point. And then they brought in Celia Weston, who played Jolene. And she played, the replacement, waitresses were always Southern, but they were always very unique. They were their own, person, even though one requirement is that they were, to be Southern. And she was on as many episodes as Flo was. So they were on just about the equal amount of episodes on the show.
That's very, very true. I was just thinking that sometimes when you do have different characters that go on and off series, the audience doesn't always necessarily respond. They're like, they almost compare, even if the person isn't necessarily playing the same character. Like, for example, in a case where the same character was still on the show, but there were two different people playing it, was on Bewitched with Darren Stevens. Right. And you had the incredible, talented Dick York. And then because of his injury, he couldn't keep doing the series, even though people loved him as Darren Stevens. He had just a certain way about him that was so Darren Stevens. And then they brought in, who I thought was great as well, but not everybody received him glowingly in the beginning, Dick Sargent. And that could be tough, right? That could be tough sometimes. How do you feel they responded to, Diane Ladd, and then, to the other actress that played Jolene? How do you feel people initially responded? Did they accept both, or did it take some time?
That's an interesting question. I've heard different things, but I would say that I personally liked all three of them. They were all individual, people, and they all had their own personality, which I thought worked really well. Belle, she was more short-lived because I think that things were. Diane Ladd really wanted just to move. She wanted to be on the show, and then she realized that she wanted to move on to some other things. So it was kind of a mutual decision for her to move on after a year. But then Jolene, she was on for as many seasons as Polly Holiday was as Flo. So definitely there was something really, I think that people connected with her as well.
And that's the thing. Well, sometimes people, they probably first thought maybe if they were just tuning in, they weren't following it as closely, that maybe it was a replacement for Flo, but that wasn't the case. They weren't taking necessarily on specifically that role. And Celia was terrific as Jolene as well. People did, I think they received all of them. Nobody wanted to see this series go off either, whether it was, with Diane Ladd or, Celia Weston or Polly Holiday or any of them. It was, it came to the point, I think, when, they wanted to sort of move on, right? I mean, 9 seasons is a lot of shows. And back then, compared to now, there were many more episodes years ago in a particular season. It wasn't just a few shows and then everybody's off for the summer. There was a lot more episodes that were part of an actual season, right?
Yeah, that's right. Now, actually, after the 8th season, Linda Lavin was wanting to move on,
Right.
actually, but she decided to do the 9th season. And that season didn't have as many episodes. The others had at least 22, I think maybe 25, somewhere in there, episodes. But the last season had just 16 episodes. But they were really doing some very innovative and I think fun things for Linda Lavin, right? She actually at one point played a landlord, kind of a very had very defined opinions and kind of was a strict landlord. And then they would be in the same scenes together, both of those characters, even though they were both played by Linda Lavin. So they were really being innovative, even though they knew that the show was, in its final season. I remember that last season was when, or towards that last season, that was when Vera got married, and then she and her policeman husband got their own home. I think that they were gonna, start a family. So her character in particular was one that really just blossomed on the show. But if you look at the beginning season, where she was kind of scatterbrained.
Yes.
I liked all of the seasons, but she needed a little bit more depth from what she was being portrayed in season 1. But she had a really wonderful, journey, I think, as a character.
All the characters did. They sort of developed as they went along and learned a little bit more, about them, including Alice. And there she is on TV Guide. They were on TV Guide multiple times over the years as well. And yeah, you come to a time where you want to move on. You want to, because Linda Lavin took on everything. She was in, stage performances and TV commercials and films and after school specials. And she did it all, cabaret. And, she went on to Dukes of Hazzard, right?
I'm not sure she did. I think the Dukes of Hazzard was over by the time, I could be wrong, but I think it was over by the time. So Alice ended in 1985.
Yeah, I think it says that Celia Weston moved on. She was a concurrent character. Let's see. Jolene also mentions her distant relative, Jefferson Davis. Boss Hogg, a character from the concurrent CBS series, The Dukes of Hazzard, in an episode. Oh, so she mentions the Dukes of Hazzard. Ah, okay.
So that, there was a crossover.
There was a relative. Right. Okay. Right. So she wasn't necessarily in it, but Celia had a distant relative connected to it. They used to do that a lot. Remember when they did that sometimes with soap operas too, where they would sort of blend, and that's how they would do spinoffs too, because the Jeffersons and Good Times and Maude and all sort of, Maude was Edith's cousin. And then all of a sudden, William Paley at CBS said, "Who's that? Make a show." Okay. Norman did for B. Arthur, which was perfect. So Celia, who was again terrific in this role as Jolene, she mentions having that.
She did, but a little earlier, actually, Boss Hogg and is it Roscoe or it's Enos? One of the two.
Oh yeah,
They were on an episode of Alice as a crossover. I'm not so sure that Jolene was in that episode, but they definitely had that because they were both CBS shows, and they were trying to. It was a great episode.
The final episode too, which remember when they would say final episode, it was like a monumental television event back then with all the mini series that were on, like Roots and all those series that were huge, The Winds of War, and all these mini series. And that series finale, which aired March 19th, 1985, news of several life-changing events revealed with a matter of minutes, something typical of sitcoms, of course. After 9 years of trying, Alice finally gets a recording contract and she's moving to Nashville with Travis. Vera announces she's pregnant and decides to be a full-time mother. Elliot, having been promoted from officer to detective, Jolene's granny Gums passes away and leaves her enough money to open her own beauty parlor in her hometown. And besides, all three waitresses suddenly leaving simultaneously, by amazing coincidence, Mel has just sold the diner for a large amount of money, and a real estate developer must close within days. And on the closing day, he surprisingly gives each waitress a $5,000 bonus, a farewell bonus, which was something special, like Mel was in that final episode. I like when they wrap it up like that. And the remainder of the episodes were, I guess, flashbacks of humorous and significant events as well. And many of the stars that appeared on the show as well, and including Polly Holiday, who, again, we just lost. And then, there were so many famous celebrities that came in and out of the show as well for various moments. And they had series regulars, too, who were the customers, Henry and Chuck and Earl. They said emotional farewells in the final episode as well. And the last thing you see is Mel putting up the closed sign and locking up, which was perfect. That was very similar to Mary Tyler Moore in the new WJM newsroom, turning the lights off after they all hug and they slide over for the Kleenex. And she's the last one. And she gives that final look. And you hear the, Tipperary song being sung in the distance still. And the light goes off and she smiles and the door closes and then credits and fade to black. Similar with Mel, a beautiful way to end that series, right? A way that I think fans and viewers would have hoped the series would have ended, that there wasn't like a tragedy or something went wrong. They wanted it to end well, and it certainly did. It was very touching.
Yeah. And I agree. Yeah, everyone had a wonderful place to move on to. And even with the diner closing, Mel did something that he rarely did. He was very generous, in giving that bonus. So, I really think that was a very, very nicely done episode.
Where do you see the series in the annals of television history? I mean, it was comedy, it was humor, it had a point, it had a message, it was inspiring as well. It had all these incredibly memorable catchphrases, "Kiss my grits," which people sometimes still say. Sometimes they say other versions that are a little more potent. "Kiss my honey too." "When donkeys fly," all flow, of course. And I mean, some of these are really cool phrases that stand out.
Other characters, though, had catchphrases too, right? Mel had "stow it."
Yes, stow it.
Puppy toes to his girlfriend. So there was a number of catchphrases were really kind of an important ingredient to Alice. But something to note about Alice and Flo that was a little different, that when Flo went over to her own show, she rarely said "kiss my grits." That was something that was just unique to Alice. And Vic Tayback came on for one episode of Flo where he was returning from vacation, and he happened to stop off in the tavern to see Flo and see how she was doing. Then they had, challenges that they had to deal with, in that episode. So there was even kind of a crossover to a degree with Flo along with Alice.
It's amazing. It really is how they did the crossovers and how they blended everything. And stow it is kind of like Archie Bunker's Stifle. Right. There were all of those, right? Stifle, that dummy up. I mean, some of these things that they said, and B. Arthur with Maud. I mean, God will get you for that. Right. And then sometimes she would yell at She was so good as Maud. She would yell at Walter for something that, dummy, just like only be Arthur with her bold voice and her height and her stature and just everything. Only she, I think, could really pull off that Maud character in the way that she did. I loved her as Maud. I know that everybody loves her in the Golden Girls too, and fabulous in the Golden Girls, but I still always loved her in Maud because, again, I think it was a character that only she, Beatrice Arthur, could have nailed in such a way. Maudie is here in Tuckahoe. Yeah. And Tuckahoe, New York.
Sorry. It's something kind of with Polly Holiday. She really crafted her character of Flo. It was different, right, than from the feature film. And Polly Holiday was from the South. So she had traveled with her father, who did some trucking and had been to a number of different restaurants kind of on the road with him when she was growing up. And that's where she found her different qualities for the character of Flo. And that's how she created her character, by the different waitresses and people that she had met while traveling briefly with her father.
And a series like Alice really is, important to the history of television, and it's in the annals of history of good broadcast television. And of course, there's the movie as well. Now, anybody who hasn't seen the movie, they're all going to run out and they were going to want to see the movie now too. But for you, as somebody who wrote about it, who did the research, who dug deep, who took that deep dive into the people, the characters, the series, how these things were put together, and the movie as well. What are some things, and congratulations on the book too, what are some things that you learned? What kind of an additional appreciation did it give you for the series, for the characters, for the way television's put together, and also for what you've learned about the making of the movie as well? What are some things that you were left with as the person who did the work and dug in deep?
Wow, thank you for the question. So one thing that I thought was really interesting is that the show was shot before a live audience, and they really tried not to, although sometimes they tried not to do multiple takes. But once the audience was let go for the evening after the episode, then they would do the close-up shots, the reaction shots. So I thought that was really interesting, because they don't seem like they're done at a different time, right? They seem very integrated and very natural. So I just thought, wow, so anytime we're seeing something that's kind of a reaction shot, it actually was not shot at the same time as the rest of the episode. So that really, I thought was really interesting to learn about how they did the shows at that time. That's one thing. And I really loved also, I guess, about the feature film, how Martin Scorsese did use the improv and transcription with the actors to really help them understand more about their characters and get comfortable with them, and have the script feel authentic to who the character and themselves as the actor are. So those were some of the main things that really stood out to me.
What are you working on next? What can we expect from Mr. Barry M. Putt Jr.?
I have a couple of things going on. I have one of my books. Actually, this is a postcard of it here. You had mentioned it earlier. The Audio Dramatist Resource Guide that was just published yesterday, and that is a guide for audio drama writers to find companies. It's a vetted book of over 100 opportunities for audio drama writers to find a home for their work. So that's one thing I'm working on. I'm working also on the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew on Film, TV, and Stage, Volume 1. That should come out in 2027, which is the 100th anniversary of the first printing of the first Hardy Boys book. So Volume 1 will be out. I've interviewed well over 100 writers, producers, actors for that book. And it encompasses, between the two volumes, It encompasses everything from the 1930 films with Bonita Granville all the way up until the most recent Hardy Boy and Nancy Drew's series. And it's an in-depth behind the scenes look at all of the different productions that were based upon those characters. And then I guess I have a number of things, but then another I think important thing that I'm working on right now is my play O Meets Tapestries. That will have a production next summer in New York City at the Midtown International Theater Festival. There's also a screenplay for that story as well that won a screenwriting award, and I'm shopping that around to find a production of that as well.
So you've got a lot of things brewing, my friend, a lot of cool things you're working on. That's exciting, huh?
Yes.
You love what you're doing, huh?
I do. It's always exciting to, you get to learn when you do it too, which is another thing, through the research, especially when I'm writing the books, I get to learn more about whatever I'm doing. So I just think that there's so many fascinating things in this world. And
absolutely, yeah.
I love to be able to learn about them and bring them to the readers and to
bring them to light and share them, right?
Yeah.
I tell you, really cool stuff, and I love these kinds of conversations, talking especially about television.
Can I tell you just one last thing? The 4th season of my Western, Richard Wade U.S. Marshal, will be going into production next year. So that's an audio drama series that I write. And so that's another thing I have going.
Is there a website to go to for any of this?
Well, you can go to my website, which is barrymputtjr.com.
And see the spelling right there. There's a spelling for his name.
Yes. I have and I have a newsletter. So a monthly newsletter, which there's a link to sign up at the bottom. So then you'll always be aware of, what I'm doing right at the moment. That's probably the best place to go, but you can go to the Richard Wade U.S. Marshal website and listen to the episodes. I have some other things. Blackstone Audio will be putting out an audio drama version, a new one of Beauty and the Beast that I wrote. That should be next year as well. So that will be through Blackstone, but most everything else will be available on my website.
Fantastic. Good stuff coming and good stuff already out and available with Alice celebrating the feature film, but also, of course, the TV series we love so much, Life Behind the Counter and Mel's Greasy Spoon. And there are some of the originals on the screen there. There's the book. The book is critically acclaimed. Everybody loves it. And you got to add it to your collection if you're a TV person, TV buff, Alice buff, Linda Lavin buff, Vic Tayback, any of them, or you just want to learn more about something that's part of, history when it comes to entertainment and comedy and television, as well as the Academy Award-winning, material from Martin Scorsese. You might want that as well. And I'm sure you're going to be renting this soon. And if you have never seen Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, and give you a little bit of a perspective from what we were talking about. And Alice, well, Linda Lavin, she again is with us in spirit. There you are with her. She really was somebody special. And I encourage folks as well to not only get Barry's book, but go back, as I mentioned at the start of the show, if you didn't see it, and check out our Linda Lavin Celebrity Tribute Special, who was Alice on the series. And we brought in some very, very wonderful people, celebrities and friends who paid tribute to Linda Lavin when she passed away. And it wasn't that long ago. And Polly Holiday has left us recently as well. So all of these figures, all of these characters, all of these smiley faces, they all had a story to tell, and they shared it with all of us on Alice. And we celebrate it. We're so glad you were able to join us to celebrate it, everybody, and to have Barry with us as well, who dove in deep and dug out some nuggets, and he's got recipes and trivia and tips and all kinds of cool stuff, which I think is fantastic. Check him out on social and as well as the websites. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and X as well at Jim Masters TV. And if you enjoyed what we're doing here all these great episodes. Go back and binge watch them. Be sure and like, comment, and subscribe. Drop a comment below. What's your favorite Alice episode? Anything that Barry and I talked about? Maybe we left something out that you wanted to talk about or you wanted to know more about. Drop a comment. We'll see those comments as well in the comments section. Give us a thumbs up, like, and subscribe to the channel, Jim Masters TV. We would love to have you a part of the JMS Lovity family, as we call it. Barry, this was fantastic. Really a pleasure getting a chance to chat with you. And when I saw there was an opportunity to talk about the beloved series and all the folks involved and how you put your heart and soul into the book, and they touched upon the feature film and flow and everything else, I said, we've got to have him on to celebrate the series and celebrate your work. So I hope you enjoyed the time with me as much as I have with you today, Barry.
It was great, Jim. Thank you so much for having me on. It was wonderful to talk about this and to chat with you as well.
The pleasure is all mine, and you're part of our family too, because you've been checking out some of our other episodes, you said too, right? Which I really appreciate, and I think that's fantastic.
I did. I actually just recently watched The Pointer Sisters with Ruth and Anita. I watched that episode.
Was that not a hoot and a holler?
Yes.
Especially when Ruth was lighting that
cigar,
and she says, "What do you have there?" the two of them together, and that's one of the final. We have some episodes of our series, which is amazing, Barry, where it turns out that's the final interview that person has had. And there's a few that are now, in the history books. There was the actress Jill Jacobson, who was on Star Trek and a lot of other incredible things. And she was on our show several times, and she was just on like a month before her passing. And she was talking about going through her cancer and treatment, but she was on the upward swing. She was doing better. And she was very open. It was real and heartfelt, the conversation. It became the final, last interview. And then it ended up in the Hollywood Reporter, and other news media picked it up, and it, created a life of its own. But she didn't know, and I didn't know it was going to be her final. Judy Tenuta, the comedian Judy Tenuta, was another person where that ended up happening. The amazing Kreskin, he was on our show from New Jersey, him too. And so many incredible people here. So, but this won't be your last, just so you know. I don't want you to feel anything impending. This will not be his last on our show. He's got more books, more things to share. I make that announcement now. Barry's going to take some multivitamins after this. This is not your last appearance. Okay. That's only 4 out of hundreds. Had nothing to do with us. Just life.
Yes.
You got to laugh, right, Barry? You got to laugh. All right. This was terrific. Congratulations again on everything and on the book. Thanks for your generosity of time. There's the book again, folks. And it's also on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and where books are available, right, my friend?
Yes. Yes. And it's in all 3 forms: digital, softcover, hardcover.
Any audiobook coming out at all with it?
There won't be, not for this.
Kindle or?
Oh yeah, Kindle. Yes, it's the digital. That's what I meant by digital.
The Kindle,
it's definitely electronic. Kindle.
Some people love that too. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, it's great because it's immediate, right? And you can just use it on your device.
That's right
there, or even on your phone.
Exactly right. Cool stuff, my friend. Thanks so much for being with us, Barry. We appreciate you being here. Spread the word about our show. Come see us again. And thanks for the generosity of time. It was a really wonderful conversation. And again, I really hope you enjoyed it.
I did. I had a wonderful time, Jim. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
You are very, very welcome. Keep up the great work. Congratulations on the book. And we'll chat again soon, my friend. Okay?
Okay. Sounds good.
We'll keep the porch light on for you, which I say to all the guests. So the light is on for you to return.
Okay, sounds good. Okay.
Take care. So it will fade to black, and then we'll have the color bars, and then we'll have the national anthem, and then the test pattern, right? Is that how we're supposed to end this? Okay. Like when TV stations used to sign off. You be well. Thanks for joining us.
You too. Thanks. Bye.
Barry M. Putt Jr., author of Alice, Life Behind the Counter and Mel's Greasy Spoon. You're going to want to get that if you're an Alice fan. Again, one other reminder, again, we did a wonderful tribute to Linda Lavin here on the Jim Masters Show, Celebrity Tribute Special. Check that out if you didn't get a chance to see it. It was wonderful. And again, there's the book. Make sure you pick up a copy of that. And so great getting a chance to in a very free-flowing, conversational, non-scripted way, celebrate not only the series and all the people involved over the years, and there's Celia when she was Jolene, and of talking about Flo, that spinoff as well, and of course, the movie, Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, and that time Desi Arnaz was on, and so much more. A really terrific conversation with Barry. And again, post a comment below in the comment section. Did you see the movie Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore? Have you seen the entire series, Alice? Have you not seen it? What are your favorite episodes? Whatever the case may be, interact with us. We absolutely I love seeing your comments, and I really appreciate it. And now the next time you are in Phoenix, go stop by the diner and go have a soup and sandwich and tell them you heard about it on the Jim Masters Show. I bet they would love that. All right, gang, we thank you for being with us. And again, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, like. That helps us grow. And more people get to see it. Share the link on your social media. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Jim Masters TV, as well. And again, drop a comment below in the comment section. And we would love that. And we thank you so much for watching our series, all these great guests, all these episodes, all these amazing things that we talk about and celebrate here on the show. It's just really fantastic. And some of your favorite stars from Hollywood and television and Broadway and film and life have stopped by our show, and so much more. Did you see the wonderful tribute episode we did to celebrate Gracie Allen, another TV star and singer and comedian and vaudevillian? That was epic. That is recent. Check that out as well. Good stuff, folks. We love having you here. Don't forget to take care of one another. Don't forget to love one another. And don't forget to do the very same for yourself. It's important to do that. And I guess the theme of this episode, don't forget to laugh. Go to a good diner with family and friends. Have a tuna melt or a late night Monte Cristo, remember those, and laugh and think about the wonderful cast in Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore and in Alice, the TV series. We raise a glass to all of them. Wonderful celebration of Alice with all of you here. Jim Masters here. Be well, everybody. Come see us again. We love you all. And don't forget to, again, take care of yourself. It's important to do that. We'll see you soon. And cheers.